This is Fountain
Every
Street
week I find
Church.
it hard to find the best ones, but somehow, like I said, you'll hear what I'm trying to say even when the words
Here,
aren't.
we strive to free the mind, grow the soul, and change the world. Here, there is freedom to doubt and freedom to believe. Here, you can find a house of prayer for all people.
The swallow up Jonah.
Welcome to Fountain Street Church. Join us on the journey.
Makes you want to dance? It's not just cover music. Thank you. You look good in love. I asked y'all to come dressed up in love, and it looks like you did, whether you meant to or not. That's the thing about life. Each one of us and everyone around us is dressed up in love. Not just at Christmas. We are love embodied, or at least the possibility of love embodied. That's part of what I have to share with you and ask you to consider this morning, this third Sunday of Advent. Because I think sometimes we wait for the love that we want, expecting it to look a certain way, or the love that we want to be, expecting we have to behave that right way. And then in the process, we miss the love that we are, or that's around us. One of the inspirations for this message this morning was that song that came from the Sex and the City soundtrack. I was dancing in my office the other day to that and thought, this has got to be a part of the worship service. At the 9:45 service, we actually had a little dance out in the chapel, and I held this up and said, this is one way to dress up in love this season. I wore it last night to a party, but decided it might be a little bit too bright this morning. But it also comes with a story about dressing up in love. You see, before I came into the ministry, some of you may have heard me say that I did child protection work for a number of years. In the beginning of that work, I was working on what was called an ongoing team. So we were the folks who, once a case was opened of neglect, based on neglect or abuse, we were the folks who would go and work with the families, try to keep kids in the home if possible, or try to return them to home if possible, work with the parents, work with the extended care community. We were the ongoing folks. And then there were those other folks called the intake team. They were the ones who really got, I think, the toughest job. The ones who had to field the calls, the ones who had to be the first face of Child Protective Services in the home, the ones who often saw the worst of the worst. They were great at what they did. And so were a lot of the people that I worked with. But there was a reputation that the intake team more often looked like this than like this. They had to be ready at the drop of a hat to go to the courtroom, to meet with attorneys. They didn't spend all day, every day in neighborhoods and homes. The ongoing workers, we happen to dress a lot more casually. You really had to push us to put on a suit and tie. Well, one day I decided I wanted to interview, to be an intake worker. And I suddenly looked at my closet and said, I don't have anything to wear. How do I dress up like that kind of love? Because I realized It is a kind of love. The kind of love that steps in the midst of violence and danger. The kind of love that says the hard things. We don't like to talk about that kind of love. When we talk about God being a God of love, the quote that we read this morning, we oftentimes think of romantic or sentimental, squishy love. We don't think of the hard boundaries, the difficult decisions that have to be made to keep people safe. As an ongoing worker, I liked to carry, and you might not be surprised to hear this, a softer presence. I was and am kind of more of that mushy kind of love guy. So when I went to interview, I wore what I called my ongoing sweater. It was cream-colored. And my khaki pants, and my brown jacket. And I got a job offer. And I realized that wasn't the kind of love that I can give. So I kept doing that work for a while. What kind of love are you dressed to give the world? Not just with your wardrobe, with your words, with your actions, with how you carry yourself, how you look at others. It's always an honor to be preaching up here, but it's especially meaningful to me this Sunday because Love Sunday was my first preaching engagement with you 4 years ago. And so I feel like coming through 4 Advent seasons and coming back to love again is like T.S. Eliot says, beginning where you started and knowing it for the first time. Your love of Advent has taught me things I didn't know before. My first Sunday of Advent, I sat here and watched these candles get lit and watched your awe and your silence and thought, what is this? This is kind of creepy. And this morning, as I sat there and watched the candles get lit and heard the hushed silence, I started to feel the tears welling up and thought, I get it now. There is something magical about this season. All too often, though, we tie that magic to just the warm, friendly, happy feelings, just the familiar, just the carols we know how to sing. And yes, I know, we've heard, you want more carols. This might be the one time a year when we can sing merrily. But the thing is, we get attached to the form of love, and then we ignore all the other ways that it comes to us. As a warm, fuzzy junkie, I have a tendency to love the love songs that talk about heartbreak even, or the song What Sarah Said by Death Cab for Cutie that talks about love is watching someone die.